church enjoyed a drink now and then. He had a particular passion for one spirit in particular, peach brandy. One of his congregants and friends knew about this and about him, and he would make him a bottle of this every year as a gift, as a Christmas gift. So one year the minister went to visit the man, knowing and hoping that he would get his usual Christmas gift. And this year he got it. He was not disappointed, but there was one condition, and the person's name was Joe. That was his name, Joe. So Joe had a condition on this gift this year. He told the minister that he had to thank him for the peach spirit that he makes for him from the pulpit the next Sunday. So in his haste to get the bottle, the minister hurriedly agreed, and then he left. And then Sunday morning came about, and he was walking up to the pulpit and ready to give his inspiring message, and he suddenly remembered that he had made this promise, and he had to make a public announcement about being supplied alcohol from a member of the congregation. And there sat Joe, front and center, with a big grin on his face, just waiting to see what the minister would do. The minister stepped up to the lectern and said, "Before we begin, I have an announcement. I would like to thank very much my friend Joe for his kind gifts of peaches and for the spirit in which he gave it." There's always a way around things. This month we are talking about gifts. We are talking about gifts for the whole month, and the gifts of the season. And as Barry so perfectly spoke about gifts not being always tangible, in fact, the greatest gifts are intangible. I've been starting each week with a joke, so that's my gift to you, and I'm please, if you have any jokes, just email them to me, Christmas jokes, because I need jokes, folks. But, so we can keep it going for the month. So this month we're focusing on the gifts of the season, and not bribes, not gifts that we've earned like our minister friend, but gifts that are automatically given. They're automatically given. And just for the record, we're not talking about physical gifts. We're talking about metaphysical gifts, spiritual gifts. Rather, those gifts that don't come out of a bottle. They come from spirit. They come from the divine, and they reside within each and every one of us. Those are the great gifts. That's what the practitioner students were doing their treatment about, the gifts of spirit that are in each and every one of us. And so, quoting Ernest Holmes, the founder of Science of Mind, religious science, he says, and this is the third week in a row I'm quoting this one particular passage, "The gift of heaven come alike to all. How we should use these gifts, is all that matters." How do we use our gifts? And the entire month I have been asking two important questions. And one was, what gifts of God, gifts of spirit, gifts of heaven, am I open to receive? And two, how shall I use them? How shall I use my gifts? Because we all have these gifts. Are we using them? Have we unwrapped the gift? And I framed the talks for the whole month around those two questions. So today's gift is the gift of self. The gift of self. Our true self. That divine self within us. Our higher self, our God self. And so we're going to take our two questions and ask around them the idea of the gift of self. What gifts of self am I open to receive? How shall I use these gifts of self? So we're going to go into those two questions. So how many of you were here 2 Sundays ago when it was the first Sunday of the month, and we talked about, yes, good, then you'll remember all of this. You'll remember we did a short visualization. Do you remember that, faintly? It's in which I invited you to unwrap the gift. If you remember we had the gifts, and if we don't unwrap them, we can't use them. So to consciously receive at least one gift of self was within you as we did the visualization, and we all came up with a gift within ourselves, and to take it out of the box, to look at it, to receive it, and then to use it. And do you remember your gift?
Yes.
Good. Excellent. So my rhetorical question then for you is, how have you been open to receive that gift and experience that gift over the past 2 weeks? So think about that. Or have you done what many of us do? Maybe you did identify with something and you felt really good, it was really powerful and uplifting, and then you totally forgot about it. You know, you leave here and it was like the old talk came back in again, and it said, listen, you know, you have this, you know, we're in this environment of spirituality, and we talk about it and we feel good. And the whole point is to remember what is spoken about and to really use the practical spirituality that we are talking about every Sunday. We really want to get deep into that, and to not overpower, but to allow the old voice, the ego voice, to come up with its deficiencies, its weaknesses, its failures, its limitations, its inadequacies, and then to meet it head on and neutralize it, so that we can then establish the new beliefs that we are creating. Being in the Four Agreements class again, thank you God for that class that I do every holiday season, because it reminds me that we all have made agreements to beliefs that might not be serving us now. So now it's time that we can bring those beliefs up and look within at the gifts we have and form some new beliefs. Agree to those new beliefs so that we can live a life of peace, that we can live a life of joy, that we can live a life that is really well lived. Wow, what a concept. Instead of locking and, you know, we don't even unwrap our gifts. We leave them wrapped up, so we might receive them, but we don't unwrap them. And we don't look inside, and we don't know what they are, and we don't use them. So I'm saying it's a perfect time. Right now the world needs you to use your gifts. It's obvious, it's apparent. Look at the news. Your gift is needed on this planet. Please use your gifts. Please use your gifts. There once was an ad in the New York Times for a plastic safe. This was actually a true story. And it looked and felt exactly like an old rotten cabbage. And it didn't have a combination or a key. It had a certain way of opening it. And if you didn't do it just right, you couldn't open it. But if you did, it would split open. And people would hide their jewels inside this old-looking moldy cabbage inside, thinking everything was safe. But it's kind of like a metaphor for us. We're like the wilted cabbage sometimes. We think we're just this moldy cabbage, but really the jewels are in us. We have these great jewels within us. We just have to unlock them. That's all we have to do. We have to unlock them. They're there. They are there. And we unlock them by coming to know ourselves as the scripture says, know ye are not gods. We are images and likeness of divinity. It created us out of its own nature of good, its own nature of love, of peace, of joy, of all those qualities, and so many more, and so many more. And I heard an acronym for the word person recently, and it's not only a great acronym, but it also is a vocabulary builder. So one of the words I had to look up, and I'll explain it to you, but it is a good acronym, and I like acronyms. So PERSON, perfect expression representing source of Newman. You don't know what Newman is. It really is a word. Divine will. It means divine will, spiritual force. Isn't that cool? Newman. Now you all have that word. So, if we take that acronym then, that is what we are. We are perfect expressions of God in this world. So it's perfect expression representing source of, and if we, Newman, divine will.
How do you spell Newman?
N-U-M-E-N. Yeah. So that is a great acronym. We are perfect expressions of God. That's who we are in reality, in the big R reality. Ernest Holmes writes, "The real self is God-given and cannot be denied. It is the place where God comes to a point of individualized and personified expression." That's us. In other words, perfect expression representing source of Newman. Divine will, that is us. Today I encourage you, I invite you, I urge you to receive the gift of who you are, to honor the gift of who you are, to let the gift of who you are express in this world, even in the face of perceived limitations, because it's going to happen. You know, we're having a human experience. This stuff is going to happen, so there's going to be perceived limitations, there's going to be suffering, there's going to be things that we don't like, but that's the point that we really deepen our faith. When we go within, when we really align with Spirit, that's where the greatest growth for us occurs. And that condition, as all conditions do, pass with time. That faith and that connection with Spirit remains so deep, so beautiful. That doesn't go away. That stays with us. That's the gift. That's what we're here to do, to expand our spiritual self, to expand our souls. Because that's what Spirit does, is it expands itself by creating. It never stops creating. That's what we do. We create. We do it in a microcosm. The great I am in the macrocosm. So this morning I invite you to consider that. So on November 18th, 1995, I have another story. Itzhak Perlman, the violinist, came on stage to give a concert at Lincoln Center in New York City, if any of you are familiar with that. And if you've ever been to a Perlman concert, you know that his getting on stage was a long ordeal, because as a child he was stricken with polio, and so he had 2 braces strapped onto his legs, and he used crutches, and it was a very slow process of him coming up the steps onto the stage. So on this particular night, as always, he walked across the stage 1 step at a time, painfully yet majestically, until he reached his chair. And then he sat down slowly, 1 foot ahead, 1 foot behind, as he unlocked his braces. Then he sat down, picked up his violin, and he put it under his chin, nodded to the conductor, and began to play. This performance began like many of his other performances, and then something went wrong. Just as he finished the first few bars, one of the strings of his violin broke. You could hear it snap. There was no mistaking what that sound meant. There was no mistaking what he had to do. Walk back slowly, put on the braces again, the crutches, and go and either get another violin or another string. But he didn't do any of that. It's a true story. He closed his eyes, and he paused, and he took a breath, a deep breath, and he signaled to the conductor to play again. The orchestra began, and he began to play from where he left off. This is amazing. And he played with more passion, with more power, and with more purity than he ever played before. Now, anyone who knows anything about playing the violin knows that it is impossible to play a symphonic work with just 3 strings, with just those 3 strings. But that night, Itzhak Perlman refused to know that. He refused to know that. And here's what a woman wrote who was there and experienced the entire concert. You can see him modulating, changing, recomposing the piece in his head. At one point, it sounded like he was detuning the strings to get sound from them that they had never made before. When he finished, there was an awesome silence in the room. And then the people rose and cheered. There was an extraordinary outburst of applause from every corner of the auditorium. We are all on our feet, she wrote, screaming and cheering, doing everything we could to let him know how much we appreciated what he had done. And he smiled and wiped the sweat from his brow. raised his bow to quiet us, and then said, not boastfully, but in a quiet, pensive, relevant way, you know, sometimes it is the artist's task to find out how much music you can still make with what you have left. Itzhak Perlman, a man who has very successfully unwrapped his gift to the world and refused to let it be dampened no matter what the circumstance looked like. He was going to perform, use his gift. So I ask you, you might not be a concert violinist, and if you are, please let me know. But the world needs your music. You all have music within you, each and every one. The world needs your music, but it needs it today. It doesn't need it tomorrow, today. It needs it right here, right now. There's nothing to be waiting for. And it is written in Galatians, and the gifts of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such there is no law. So how shall you use your gifts? It's like the second part of the question. How shall you use your gifts? The world needs your needs you to heal your perceived, because they are perceived limitations. The world needs you to heal your perceived limitations and be all that you were created to be. The world needs you, truly does, to give your gifts. I really believe this, and it's deepening even further in my consciousness that any gift that I may have, that Spirit, show it to me, allow me to use it, because I want to be used by Spirit to give the gifts of self to others. And that's what I want us all to think about, because we all have immense gifts within us, great potential within us, great love within us. And so here's two different spiritual perspectives that we can get the same message from. So, and it's the first one that I gave with the Sufi teacher, who has all the beggars and the people that are crippled in front of him, and he asks, great God, how can a loving creator see such things and do nothing about them? And God said, I did something. I created you. I created each one of you. And then the other story is there's this little Catholic church in a plaza called Santa Rosa one Sunday morning. As the congregation filed in, there was a loud intake of breath. The statue of Jesus stood in the corner as usual, but vandals had entered the chapel and broken off his hands. After Mass, the priest organized a committee of parishioners to investigate the crime and buy another statue. The following Sunday, as the congregation filed in for Mass, there was another loud intake of breath. This time, a sign was hanging around the statue's neck, and it was carefully handwritten. I have no hands but yours. How does the divine express in this human realm where through each and every one of us, we are the hands of God. We do the work, the good work. We spread the good. That is our choice. That is our choice. And a Bible example is the story of a lame beggar who asked alms from Peter and John as they were going into the gate of the great temple. And Peter said, silver and gold have I none, but such as I have give I unto thee. Arise and walk. And the man picked up his bed and walked. Such as I have, give I unto thee. These words are the key to that whole phrase there. These words are the key. Today we're talking about giving of what we have, of what you have, what each and every one of us has. The giving of self. The giving of self. And it seems like in today's world, we are more apt to say things like, there's one or two things we can say. Gold and silver have I much, so here is my generous gift. Or, gold and silver I have little, so sorry, I can't give anything. But if we have either of these attitudes, we've missed the whole point. We've missed the whole point, which is the important point. We've missed the wonder of putting ourselves into the gift. Putting ourselves, we are the gift. We are the gift. Such as I have, give I unto thee. We are the gift of self. I ask again, how are you using your gifts? From a book called It Was on Fire When I Lay Down on It by Robert Fulghum. There's a really great story. John Pierpont died a failure. At least so he thought. In 1866, he came to the end of his days as a government clerk in Washington, D.C., and he felt that he never made a difference in this world. He felt that he never made a difference, never contributed anything to the betterment of humankind. And here is his story. Things began well enough. He graduated from Yale, which his grandfather had helped found, and chose education as his profession with some fond enthusiasm. Thought this was a good calling. But he was a failure, he thought, at teaching. He was too easy on his students. And so he turned to the legal world for training, and there he became a lawyer. And he felt that he was a failure as a lawyer also because he was too generous to his clients and too concerned about justice to take the cases that brought in the good money. The next career then, so quit that career, the next career he chose was that of dry goods merchant. But he also felt that he was a failure in this also because the businessman often did not charge enough, he didn't charge enough for his goods to make a decent profit. And he was also too liberal with credit. In the meantime, he had been writing poetry and short stories, and though it all had been published, it didn't bring in any royalty for him to earn a living from. And so he decided to be a minister, and he went off to Harvard Divinity School. He was ordained minister of the Hollis Street Church in Boston. But his position for prohibition and against slavery got him in crossfires with the community, with the congregation, the influential members of the congregation, and he was forced to resign. The Civil War came along, and so he decided to volunteer as a chaplain. But after 2 weeks, he had to quit that because it was too much for him. He was at that time 76 years old. And nonetheless, he felt that he was a failure. He couldn't even volunteer as a chaplain. Someone found him an obscure job in a back office in Washington in the Treasury Department, and he finished out his last years of his life as a clerk in this department. John Pierpont died a failure. He had accomplished nothing, nothing he set out to do. And there was a small memorial stone at his grave marking it in Mount Auburn Cemetery in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The words on the granite stone read, poet, philanthropist, preacher, and philosopher. From this distance in time, however, one might insist that he was not, in fact, a failure. His commitments to social justice, his desire to be a loving human being, his active engagement in the great issues of the times, and his faith in the power of humankind are not failures. In truth, much of what he thought of as defeat in his life became success. Education was reformed. Legal processes were improved. Credit laws were changed. And above all, slavery was abolished. And there's another part of John Pierpont that was not a failure. For every year, came December, we all celebrate his success. We do. We carry in our hearts and minds a lifelong memorial to this man who viewed himself when he died as a failure. It's a song. And it's not a song about Jesus or angels or even Santa Claus. It's a terribly, terribly simple song about the pleasures of life, about friendships, about laughter. It's a song that hundreds of millions of people around the world sing at this time of year. And the moment the first chord is struck, it strikes a chord in our hearts. So.
That's how you know you're captivating. Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Hey, jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh.
Okay, we don't have to do that whole song. Thank you. Thanks, Rita. So hundreds of millions of people around the world sing this song, and this man, he wrote Jingle Bells. John Pierpont wrote Jingle Bells. One snowy afternoon in deep winter, he wanted to give a gift to his family, to his friends, a small gift, and so he wrote this song. And he left a permanent gift for all of us. You see, he shared his gift. He was not aware of it. But he had so many gifts. And this was just one of his gifts. He wrote Jingle Bells for us, which will go on forever. It's a happy song. It's a joyful song. But the best thing is that these kinds of gifts that John Pierpont left were not the kind that you wrap and put under a tree. These were the gifts of self that he gave. And so I am asking each and every one of us to seek, to find, and to unwrap, and then to express the gifts that are within us. Each and every one of us, we have a jewel. So let us unwrap that jewel. Let us express our gifts this year and every year. Starting right here, right now. So it is.
So it is.